Okay, yeah, why don't we do that? Park. It's David Reddy. Okay. Hi, David. No, we haven't started yet. David, Dan had just said you might come and you wanted to speak to the budget item. Do you want to speak right away at the beginning of the meeting, or do you want to wait until we get to that spot? Doesn't matter to me.
Going to do it under city manager.
Perfect.
Comment?
That's just
Thanks.
great. Yep,
Great, thank
we
you.
can do that. Okay, great. All right. I'd like to call this meeting of the May 15th, 2018 Sustainability Commission of the City of Palm Springs to order. Delighted to see all of you here this afternoon. And I'd like to ask Vice Chair Clark if he would lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Dan, if you would lead us in the roll call, please.
Okay. Chair Jackson,
Present.
Vice Chair Clark,
Present.
Commissioner Baker. I haven't heard from him. Commissioner Futterman,
Present.
Commissioner Goins,
Present.
Commissioner Santora,
Here.
Commissioner Wilson, haven't heard from him. Commissioner Friedman,
Present.
Commissioner Gothier,
Present.
Commissioner McCann,
Present.
Commissioner Spry,
Here.
and Dara Shea is excused.
Yes. Thank you. The agenda for tonight's meeting was posted last Thursday per city policy. I'm not aware of any adjustments to the agenda. Is there a motion that we accept the agenda as presented? So moved by Commissioner Gothier.
Second.
And second from Commissioner Santora. All in favor say yes.
Yes.
Opposed say no, and we have an agenda. I don't see any other commission liaisons, and Dara Shea is absent tonight, so we don't have that item. So we have a report from our city manager. Welcome, David. We're delighted to have you here with us tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good afternoon, everyone. I just wanted to join you. A couple things I wanted to just brief you on. I'm happy to answer any specific questions if you have them, but one of the things I wanted to discuss is with regard to the budget. So that's before you for approval. A couple things I would just note. Your recycling fund and the sustainability fund. So if you notice both of them, what I want to do is make sure that the fund balance reserve, in essence, to appropriate those dollars. In the case of sustainability, program expenses of $289. In the case of recycling, your program expense of $1 million. That's basically all your fund balance, in addition to your operating, because that's your programmatic revenue. So the idea is you appropriate it. I mean, spend every penny of it if you like, if you've got programs for it, and what you don't spend, obviously, will just be rolled over to the next year. So that, I just wanted to point out that that's why I thought it was important to do this, so you know what you have to work with. Okay, that's one. Number two, I know there's been some discussion with regard to staffing. Now, since Michelle was in this position, you know, we've not had a managing director, if you will. Part and parcel of that has been because you didn't have a lot of revenues to support it. That being said, what we do know, and what I think your recommendation is to go back to that model. What I would suggest, and is that as we move forward with this, I think we probably need to take a little more comprehensive look. And so what I would like to do is work with, whether it's the chair or you have a budget subcommittee or however you want to do it, is to sit back and take, what does the full staff need to look like? Is it a director and 2 staff, a director and 1 staff? What kind of staff? What would best suit the needs? And a clerical, and this, and that. And maybe that's 2 people, maybe that's 4 people. I don't know, but I think now's the opportunity to take a look at whole, and see what it is that you want to do. So what I would recommend is you pass this budget now, and it obviously proceeds with the dollars for the current personnel and the staff. And then that will give us some time to come up with what your recommendation will be, and then that's what we'll take to council. Now, those dollars obviously would come from the other programmatic. We would move those up into the personnel line items. So that being said, I think it is time to step back and take a look comprehensively at what you want as a staff. And so I think we can accomplish that in a relatively short period of time over the next 30 to 60 days.
Right. I appreciate the clarity of the budget that we received in our packet this month. Maybe it's taken me 5 years to understand city budgets, but from my read, it's the clearest presentation that I've seen in a while, so I appreciate that very much. Commissioners, do you have questions of Dr. Reddy this afternoon? We have this agendized under new business item 1. So we will certainly come back to it for our discussion, but while David is here, if you have questions, we want to have those.
Okay.
Yes. Oh, Commissioner Goins? Yes.
No, just leaning in.
Oh, okay, all right. All right. Okay.
I have a
Commissioner
question.
Santor?
Yeah, you said it was provided, but I can't seem to find it. Is there a copy available for us to peruse at the moment?
I don't have an
What, the
extra
budget?
copy, but I can.
Well, the budget's in your agenda. It's on page.
This is all I have for an agenda.
Oh, well, it was,
Right here.
we had 12, I think 12 attachments last Thursday, but we can get you one, so, and we'll come back to that.
Bless you.
Other questions of David?
Okay, I do have a couple other items
Okay,
to
all right.
talk about. Yep.
Okay, all right, well,
All-
kind
all-
of close the budget, please, thank you.
Also, on June 6th, the council meeting, not tomorrow, but 2 weeks from tomorrow, we're going to talk about the CVAG Energy Cooperative. Councilmember Coors had asked that we get that moving back in front of council. What I'm going to need, and I'm going to ask Jay to do this, and obviously Daniel, and whatever help you need to give me. I'm not exactly sure what the specific next step is, but in getting prepared for that meeting for 2 weeks from now, we want to have that discussion, and I don't know if it's a study session, but I don't know if there's some particular action that you need as well. I guess that's the question. So
Okay.
give that some thought, and however you can assist me in getting ready for that, it would be welcomed.
Okay, this is the CVAG Energy Committee. Commissioner Freeman, did you want to respond?
I assume, based on what I heard from Councilmember Coors, is that he had asked for a discussion on the DCE, Desert Community Energy, the Community Choice Aggregation Program. So I assume that's what that's referring
Yes.
to. We have on our agenda a motion that I've made and some support materials to recommend that the city choose the carbon-free option 100%. So hopefully, if that is passed shortly, that would be a recommendation. I'd be delighted to work with staff on all information. I've been following this very closely on my role here. So count me in to assist on any information that I can help you provide. And a staff report, if that would help. I've already done most of that work today.
Okay, thank you, David.
So is that was
Yep,
the
that-
specific topic?
That
Okay,
helps.
all right.
Two other quick things. One, also under new business number 7 on your agenda, the title is Formalizing Procedures to Communicate Sustainability Commission Resolutions to the City Council. What I could offer on that is, certainly you speak through your votes. So anytime you actually vote on an item of a policy item, what we'll do is we will just take that to City Council, and we take them to City Council, receive and file. And at that point, then they would, if it's something that they want to pursue further, they'll pull it off the agenda, and we'll have a further discussion. They'll give us direction. So anytime you pass agenda, you pass an item, we will put it on the agenda, receive and file. So that's the easiest and best way to do it. I think Councilmember Coors is your liaison to sustainability, and so then he also will be able to advocate for that item, also based on what it is that you voted. So that would be the easiest way to do that. And then finally, I have a personal request from a business, Sherman's Deli. All of you know Sherman's. Was talking with Sam, the owner, and he was wondering how he could get a bike rack, because he's got a lot of people biking there, and I thought, well, that's easy. I think we'll just ask, and we will provide. So if you could reach out and let him, I think he's asked for maybe 2, but I don't know what your policies are, so if you could reach out to him, that would be helpful.
Will do.
Okay.
Okay.
And any questions? Great.
Commissioners, any questions of Dr. Reddy?
All right. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks for dropping by this afternoon. All right, and we will certainly, Jay Verada is in another meeting that started at 4, and so we will certainly come back and give him an opportunity to speak when he arrives. Dan, is there anything you need to say at this point?
Yes, we have learned from city manager that he is ready to go ahead and move forward with naming the community gardens in honor of Michelle Mycian. Just to change to as something that he feels the city wants to do, because she worked so hard at getting it going. The community gardens are, as you know, located at Demuth Park by the community center. And so my thought was maybe to put out some kind of a contest or survey to get either, people here at the city who are employees, residents, and everybody to do it like a little naming contest maybe, if that's something you feel like you may want to do, to try to get ideas of how or what the name should be or how it should state, rather than just in memory of or something that I thought might be a fun little project to do to get interest in the community gardens and in the Sustainability Commission as well. So, let me know what your thoughts are on that. And I think that's all I had at this point. Everything else is on the agenda. Yeah.
Okay, all right, great. Feel free to chime in when we're there. All right, we are at public comment. At each meeting of the Sustainability Commission, we have time for the public to address us on items that are a part of our purview. If there's anyone from the public who wishes to speak, they have 3 minutes, and they're invited to come forward to a microphone. Please state your name and your city of residence, and we welcome you.
Hi, it's Lonnie Miller again. Thank you. I'm a Palm Springs citizen, customer, consumer, and advocate for recycling. Here's a bag of plastic odds and ends. I'll pass that around if you don't mind. Can you tell me, are these recyclable? I have many questions about what can and cannot be recycled. With your permission, I present you with a quiz, including the yes or no answers on the back. So I'm going to pass this around. You're busy, so I'll go ahead and pass that around. The sources for these answers were from the websites of PSDS and Burtech, and I spoke to a recycling customer service rep at both. I also looked for answers from the City of Palm Springs on the Sustainability Commission website, and never did receive a call from the city's recycling coordinator. And so this you're familiar with, this you're familiar with. So those are 2 sources from Palm Springs. Also PSDS and the woman that I spoke with. And this is Burtech's pretty amazing information booklet for the members of Cathedral City. I realize that Burtech does not pick up Palm Springs trash. However, all Palm Springs waste, recycling, and green waste go to Edom Hill Transfer Station in Cathedral City. Here, it is mixed together with the waste from the other Coachella Valley districts. There are considerable discrepancies among these 3 sources of information, as you will see on the back of when you look at the answers. Ultimately, they're all mixed together, each one according to its category. For the sake of implementation and community education and discussion, I would like to put a plug in for a master list, which would be less confusing and could be published to our community, some collaboration with Vertec and certainly PSDS and our own committee here. And I would ask that the commission follow up with consistent signs for our future recycling containers. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to speak in public comment? All right, I'll declare public comment closed. All right, we are at welcome and introductions. I don't think there's anybody to introduce tonight. So item B, meeting minutes. We'll look first at the regular meeting minutes of April 17th, 2018. I'll just make one notation. I was out of the country when all of you received these initially and only was able to read them yesterday. Under Commissioner comments, there is one error, and Dan's going to make that correction. Elections for chair and vice chair would take place at the July 2018 meeting, not next month. I'll continue to hold on to this gavel for one more meeting. So your elections will be held in July. So there's that one correction. Other than that, Dan, I guess you
I had no
received-
other corrections.
Corrections, all right. Is there a motion to accept the regular meeting minutes of April 17th as presented? So moved. So moved by T. Santora. Second from Commissioner Spry. All in favor say yes.
Yes.
Opposed say no. Abstentions. And we have minutes that we have adopted. Now we'll go to the study session minutes of Monday, April 23rd, 2018 at the Wellwood Murray Library. Is there a motion to accept those minutes as presented? So moved by Commissioner Baker, seconded by Commissioner Santora. All in favor say yes. Yes. Opposed say no. And those minutes, I should call for abstentions from those who are absent.
Abstain.
Abstention from Commissioner Wilson. All in favor say yes. Yes. Opposed say no. Abstentions, and we have minutes approved. Thank you. All right. Gary has moved to the table in an efficient manner. Give us our recycling report, please.
Okay, I'll be brief. We had our shredding and e-waste event last month. It was very well attended. We held it in conjunction with Palm Springs Disposal and their spring cleanup, and those are always well attended. Desert Arc was happy. They filled up their five-ton truck, so they were very happy. The second thing that I have is the beverage grant application was approved by the state, so the monies will be distributed late September, and that's for the upcoming year.
Okay.
And the last thing I have for you is some, the legislation has already been signed, but it won't become effective until 2022, and it is AB 1383. Now, currently we have SB 1383, I'm sorry. Currently we have AB 341, which covers the commercial side of all vendors must recycle. We also have AB 1826 is the commercial side for the organics. What this bill will do is it will combine both of those later down the road, and it also has three other elements. And the title of it is Short-Lived Climate Pollutants, Organic Waste Methane Emissions Reductions. The purpose of the bill is to reduce the methane emissions to a certain level, and I won't bore you with all the details. I am going to put together a package which will be disseminated to all of you, so at least you'll be familiar with it. One aspect is that this is going to have an element for the residents to do their green waste, and for anyone else that wants to participate in that. You don't have to be a commercial location, so anybody else, so that'll be one aspect of it. The other aspect of it is that there now will be an enforcement mechanism because the air quality folks have gotten involved because of the methane emissions. I don't know if you were aware of it. I believe Chris stated this before, but if someone is required to recycle, the law doesn't say how much they're required to recycle. So let's say that you were in the 4 cubic yard category per week. You only have to do a 32-gallon toter because there's no law to enforce it. Now with this bill, there will be. So they can't do that anymore. So I just want to give you a broad overview and let you know that this is coming down the pike. Currently, where they're at is, they're conducting workshops. I went to one in Carlsbad last week just to see what was going on. And, the dates are out to, like I said, 2019, 2022 in that time frame. The reason they did it now is to get everybody ready and give them time to get their facilities ready, which I'm sure Rob will speak to later, and some of the issues that may, present themselves to the final destination where this materials would be taken. Be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, commissioners, questions of Gary?
The money that you said would be available in the fall, is that for FY 18-19?
Yes,
So currently, we're planning to spend the FY 16-17 money by the end of June, and then we have FY 17-18 money as well. So by the fall, we'll have 2 years' worth of funding.
correct. And the monies that have recently been approved go out to, June of 2020. So it's actually like 18, 20 months, I believe, time frame that you have to spend it.
Thank you.
Okay. Other questions? All right, thank you, Gary.
Thank you. I should mention also that I saw Jen's billboard out on Vistacino, very prominent.
Oh, good, that's great. All right, we are at our section of old business, and the first item is the Ad hoc Subcommittee on Film Festival Programs. Commissioners Futterman and Gauthier, you two did make a report last month. Is there a further report you wish to make tonight?
We don't have a written report, but we did attend yet another Wild and Scenic Film Festival that was held at the UCR Palm Desert campus a couple weekends ago, and Jennifer had the opportunity to talk with the people that organized that from the Rivers and Lands Conservancy and UCR, and there's a potential for some collaboration with the effort that we want to do with them. So we're going to follow up with that. We've both had kind of a busy month and not been able to cross paths, but it was a really different take on the event because it wasn't a fundraiser. It was more of an academic experience, and it was free, and it was really well attended. There were about 300 people there, and really excellent films.
Okay. So at this point, you are still hoping to put something on the schedule for late 2018? Is your wish?
Yes, we're thinking December,
Okay, all right, great,
so we have a little bit of time.
okay.
And it would be great to get more partners working with us, so.
Commissioners, questions? Okay, thank you very much. Our second item is to see if there is any further discussion on a proposed ordinance regarding clean air smoking and tobacco use. We've continued that so that commissioners have a chance to think about the issues and process the discussions and come up with more questions. So I'll turn to Commissioner Baker if he has something to say, or other commissioners.
Pursuant to our last meeting at the library, I guess that was, there's been no changes since then, so I open up for any questions or clarification that anyone has. Right now, where we're standing right now is we decided to go forward with the Riverside County Tobacco Sales Ordinance, sending that to City Council, and we're still going to work on getting 1PS and other viable groups to look into the proposal on the smoking ban resolution.
Right. So, yes, so just to be clear, we've sort of already dispatched the ordinance that regulates, that would regulate retailers, and we've sent that to our recommendation to City Council. So, so this item of clean air, smoking, tobacco use is still, thank you, is still before us. Commissioner Goins.
I had a question about the proposed smoking ban, and I didn't bring it up during our last discussion, so now's the opportune time, I guess. So my concern is related to my understanding is that the ban will pretty much allow only individuals who live in single-family homes to smoke. Multifamily buildings, no, also, for the most part.
That is correct.
My concern is with criminalizing smoking in public areas for the houseless community. Does this become a de facto way to criminalize houselessness? Has there been any discussion about that?
That issue has not been addressed, though I see your perspective. I don't have a simple answer for that. Assuming a person does not have a primary residence, then they would not have a legal location to smoke tobacco products unless they were visiting a friend or relative that lived in a single-family dwelling, as it stands now. Of course, that whole idea of one of the largest obstacles is the condominium apartment language. That doesn't address those people that don't live in a condominium or apartment, but that's one of the more economic balancing acts. People that cannot afford to own their own home can be seen as being penalized by this position. So again, there's some massaging and some wiggle room that may have to take place for that.
Please.
I don't know how we balance those needs. Is it an issue of frequency? But at the same time, it's probably something we can't know, right? How often will it become an issue? But either way, it seems like something we should have in.
But as it stands now, if a person is homeless and they're in the park by the library, they're already breaking the law by smoking in the park. So nothing is really changing for that effect. It's really only changing for those who live in multifamily dwellings.
Well, I was going to say, but you raised the general economic issue that this present ordinance speaks to, and that is it's disparaging of persons who have a different economic means. So I just want to point out, during our discussion, we're under no obligation to vote on this in any way whatsoever. The commission can, in fact, I'd like your advice on whether or not you want to continue the discussion. We have no obligation to vote on it. It's proceeding in other paths, and whatever city council does is whatever city council will do. We could adopt our own resolution of some sort, saying that, and just giving some general comments that we are in support of this or that, and not in support of this other and that other thing, if we wanted to do that, or we could recommend it as it is. So saying nothing or saying something is all an option, but I don't want to continue this on the agenda ad nauseum. So your thoughts either now or in June would be helpful. Commissioner Friedman.
My preference, because I do think this is clearly a wellness component within the jurisdiction of our commission, is that I would actually like to see Commissioner Baker and whoever else might want to join him to actually, come up with a proposal for our consideration, perhaps taking a look at some of the other ordinances. I got the feeling that because the ordinance that was originally proposed was coming from a very sort of strong group, an interest group, that a better place to work might be looking at cities of Pasadena and other sort of cities that do have a tourist component and see how they have resolved this. So we don't have to very much reinvent the wheel. I know Pasadena does have a comprehensive regime, and that may be, along with some other cities, a good place to start. I can't speak for 1PS, but I believe that our group may be more efficient in getting something for us to consider prior to 1PS, given their resources.
So currently, the group is with 1PS. They're sort of waiting to get input from the community via 1PS. So that's just an alternative route for them than just dealing with the body sitting here. Well,
and let me just say, that's sort of the nature of 1PS. Since they're a neighborhood organization, that's sort of what they want to do, is collect input from as many folks. We're exactly as you were saying, we're a different animal, so we can put our considered wisdom together however we might wish, And I think it doesn't have to be written necessarily in resolution format. It could simply say, the Sustainability Commission supports this or that. I mean, for instance, we could support a ban on smoking even in outdoor, well, are restaurants, they're already prohibited?
Where
Even
food-
outdoor
where
patio?
food is being served.
Where food is being served, it's prohibited to
Correct.
smoke, even if it's an outdoor patio? So right now, it's, this addresses.
bars.
This addresses bars, and it addresses the congregate living facilities that we've talked about, apartments and those condos and those sorts of things. Okay? Are you, yes, Commissioner Santora?
I think it also, I assume it's going to impact the smoking lounges, like the one on downtown where they're all smoking.
No, those are allowed to go on because they are closed space and those are specifically designed, cigar lounges and stuff can exist.
On the interior, but they have that little
Oh, you
patio
mean
on the
that- oh,
sidewalk,
okay.
which is pretty obnoxious, but
Like
unless
the
you're a
hookah.
cigar smoker.
Even the hookah thing, yeah, I didn't, that's a good point, I didn't take that in consideration. But I know they can be inside four walls,
Okay.
and like a cigar lounge, those are allowed.
So under the,
Of course, again, there's no hard and fast rule, we can say what we like, what we don't like, massage it any way we want.
so there's nothing specific under consideration that would tell you right now whether that would be prohibited or not?
No, I don't think, because that's really sort of the exception, not the rule, this handful of cigar-type hookah lounges, whereas the public spaces, I mean, that's where your real issue is, whether or not multifamily dwellings are going to be affected.
I have several concerns about this, not the least of which is the criminalization point, but I appreciate Commissioner Friedman's point that if there's an expectation about this commission coming up with some sort of recommendation, one way or the other, then we should have further discussion on it. But to your point, I don't think we should belabor it if there are other venues that this is moving forward without us. And so I'm curious, what are those other venues and where would this be coming from if not from us?
Well, the 1PS Neighborhood Organization has a subcommittee discussing it, and I think the group that are advocating are talking directly with several city council members, and so it could certainly just appear on the agenda by virtue of a council member's request for action. So, but Commissioner Friedman makes a good point. So I'll ask you, Commissioner Baker, are you would you be willing to make some sort of statement or come up with a motion that or a statement that you'd like to present to us?
Short answer, yes, once I understand the temperature in the room, shall we say. I don't know if we would like to bifurcate it, not to take up too much time, but to say, break it into three pieces to see if the commission is in favor of just the public parks and pools and that part of it, the bar part of it, versus, and then third prong would be the multifamily dwelling. I mean, that would be one way to approach it, to say yay or nay to split into three.
Okay, why don't we do that? So this is just a top of your head to give Commissioner Baker a sense of your opinion. I'll ask you to raise your hand if you would support a ban in this location. You're not required to vote, and I won't ask for a no vote or an abstention. I'll only say, are you in favor of a ban in this place? If you are, raise your hand. And that'll give him a,
Have one
okay,
Quick
okay, all right. And that-
area for clarification before we.
Okay, please,
So
Commissioner Goins.
there was mention that in some public places, it's already.
Parks, yeah.
Yeah, parks are. So we're talking about pools and, so the group that includes pools would be, can you just give me a list?
Well, I only say pools because I swim in the pool every morning, which is next to the library and the park, and there's not really anyone sitting around the pool smoking a cigarette before they get in or get out. But I'm just saying, in general, it would be public spaces, public gathering spaces, parks, any kind of barbecue type. I can't think of anything else other than parks. Hiking, that's not really the safest thing to do anyway because of dry brush. What other public spaces would we? outdoor public spaces.
Sidewalks.
Driveway.
Yeah.
Stadium.
Can you smoke in
I
the,
don't believe
yeah, I didn't think.
I don't
Yeah,
know.
so it's really not, the public part's pretty limited as it is.
Okay, Commissioner Santora?
Yeah, just two things that we think, I remember talking about at the last meeting that were a concern. One was, I think you mentioned, and maybe you can confirm, it includes everything having to do with vaping as well as marijuana and tobacco. So it's any kind of atmospheric
Fred
device.
does not distinguish what product is being smoked. It's just smoking.
So that is a major concern of mine, not that I do any of those, but, you know, if it's not harmful or if the science is out on that, then I don't think we should be stepping into it. And then the second question I raised, and I think you didn't have an answer at the time, and I don't know if you have any further information on the issue of First Nation sovereignty for all the land around here and the units that are on that land.
Yeah, I had that on my list. I did not have time to contact the Bureau of Indian Affairs this month to see what their position was.
And again, their general statement has been that ordinances adopted by the city of Palm Springs, they would adhere to on tribal land.
Except you
However-
can smoke in the casino.
However, exactly, and however, they have hedged related on that specific topic of adherence to city ordinances. They've hedged regarding the issue of short-term rentals in
Smoke.
SR, single-family home residential areas. So we don't know ongoing what the tribe might do. All right, so I'm going to ask, I'll divide it into the three groups you suggested. If you support a ban on smoking in congregate living facilities, apartments, condos. If you support a ban on
Bars.
smoking in bar patios, it's already prohibited inside the bar. And if you would support a ban in other public spaces, which are limited because there are already quite a number of public spaces that it's limited anyway. Commissioner Friedman.
Can I just ask for a clarification on the multi-family units? Would the ban be only applicable to common areas or within individual sort of units?
Inside the unit, you mean you're inside your unit? I would have to go back and read the language. I would have to read that again. I really can't remember off the top of my head.
Does anyone have an answer? My memory of the advocates who addressed it, it would ban smoking inside your unit, particularly because of some issues of transfer of smoke, through walls and ventilation HVAC systems. So
That's
I
my
think-
recollection, but I didn't want to go on
Yeah.
record.
Yeah, so, and again, we're not taking an official vote, we're giving Commissioner Baker a sense of the room. So I think our sense is that it would ban it in all areas of a condo, attached condo apartment building, I think is what.
And my memory is also that it would ban outdoor common area
Yeah.
to a
Right.
certain number of
Right.
feet
Right.
away from the.
Yeah. Okay, all right, so we'll dispatch this. So again, not an official vote. If you would be inclined to support a ban on smoking in congregate living places, apartments, condos, and the like, raise your hand. Okay, there's one.
Okay.
If you would support ban on smoking on bar patios, raise your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4 of those. If you would support a ban on smoking in additional public spaces, in addition to the ones already banned, raise your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. What those would be, I'm not sure what, okay.
That's a problem.
Okay, all right.
And I'd just like to reiterate, if it's tobacco we're talking about, I'm in. Until we know the extent that we're talking about non-toxic or non-pollutant elements, then I can't vote on that, right? So, but there's an interest on some level.
I think it
Well,
applies.
currently the law the law on marijuana consumption is the same as alcohol, so you cannot consume marijuana in public legally.
another.
That's consuming you can eat it, but you can't smoke marijuana.
Well, there's vaping,
Oh,
non-marijuana.
yeah. But
There's
I'm-
like tobacco vape.
I'm just saying marijuana, the law follows alcohol in terms of marijuana ingestion. You can't drive and smoke marijuana.
But what I think he's talking about is vaping products that do not contain THC.
Right.
So there's vaping marijuana and there's vaping,
CH,
Like-
cannabinoid, whatever.
no, not CBD, but like tobacco, equivalent of tobacco. There's teenagers vape strawberry soda.
But vape falls under cigarettes. The same laws
Right.
apply to
And
baking.
so that's the
It's saying
issue.
that there's no distinction.
Okay,
All right.
okay.
I'll have one more question, and then I think we're going to move on, because this is sort of just a, existential discussion as it is.
Well, not for me. I mean,
Well,
for
no,
me,
no,
the
no, I
issue
mean,
is-
we're not voting on, we're
Oh,
not
right.
making a decision tonight. We're having it. Yeah.
Well, if at
Please,
any point
Commissioner
a
Barnes.
recommendation is made, for me, the issue is really a spatial one, that if the discussion was around, you can smoke on bar patios if those patios are not within 25 feet of, an openable door, or, you can smoke in a multifamily unit building that was, built to these certain standards, qualified bans make more sense to me than just an out-and-out ban. That would make it a lot easier for me. So just as a point of discussion, if someone asks for a recommendation, that will help me.
Right. So Commissioner Baker, I assume this may take a little bit of time for you to formulate something for us? Or do you want it on the agenda in June, or July, or September?
Let me
What do
make
you
sure if
think?
I'm here, and I'm going to be gone. I might not be here in June. One quick second. June is our what date?
June would be June 19.
I'm out of town, yeah. It says-
Okay.
I will be here July 17th. So I'll be here July 17th.
Okay, why don't we agendize that for July 17? Some sort of presentation discussion, and I'd encourage someone to make a note of that. All right, I think Dan's made a note of it. Good, that's just great. Okay.
I have one more comment on this
Okay,
subject.
please.
With regard to 1PS, they're not dealing with the smoking ban. What they're dealing with is the tobacco retail licensing issue, and that's being worked on under the Ecology Committee.
Oh, okay, so they're not dealing with this. Thanks for that clarification. I thought they were
Yeah,
dealing
that
with
was the
this
plan, was to
issue
take it to
and not the
1PS.
other one, so,
No, actually, the plan was to take it here because that committee didn't want.
Oh, they don't.
It wasn't going to be worked in that committee, so it was taken here.
okay, so they also will presumably at some point make a decision about the retail ordinance that we voted on, but not this one. Okay, that probably then makes it a little bit more important that it get a fuller discussion in this space. So, okay, we'll make a note for July 17. All right, we are at item 3, the Milkweeds for Monarchs project. Vice Chair Clark, I don't see Christine here tonight.
I just wanted to report a couple of things. At the city council meeting on April 18th, they did vote to sign the mayor's pledge under the National Wildlife Federation program for monarch butterflies, and Dan has already submitted the paperwork. Have you heard anything back from them yet, Dan?
Not yet.
And there have been quite a few activities with regard to the milkweed. Christine and I have been at the farmer's market twice now. A week ago Saturday, in conjunction with the commission at our table, and last Saturday at the table of the Desert Water Agency. And we actually have moved about 200 desert milkweed plants. And we're not actually selling them, we're giving them for a $10 donation. And we do have other events that we're planning. We will be at World Environment Day, and there are other things that we're doing to promote the milkweed.
Questions of Vice Chair Clark? Yes, Commissioner
I
Wilson.
saw that there was some concern expressed about that particular plant being a non-native. Were you able to look into that.
Non-native specifically meaning?
Well,
Non-native
it's a
Meaning an
desert
invasive?
plant, but it's, yeah, correct.
Not native to
An
this desert?
invasive plant that would damage the local natural habitat.
Right.
It is a native plant as far as I understand.
Okay.
This is the one milkweed plant. There are many varieties of milkweed, but this is the one milkweed plant that does grow in the desert,
Our desert.
our desert.
Thank you for the clarification. There had been some questions received about that.
Other questions? Yes.
I just have
Dan.
one statement. Thanks to Roy and Christine, the city has received some of the milkweed plants that will be planted on city property.
Great,
Yeah.
perfect.
Actually, some has already been planted and more will be planted. I'd forgotten about that. I think by the leisure center, some have been planted and there will be some planted on Miralesti on the edge of Ruth Hardy Park.
All right, I think we're done with that item. See no other hands. So we're at our new business section. And so the first item is a motion, which was addressed by City Manager David Reddy, to approve the 2018-19 Recycling Fund 125 and Sustainability Fund 138 budget as presented. And I guess, I don't know that David could officially make a motion. But we could have somebody here make that motion and then proceed with discussion.
Move the adoption of the budget.
Okay, and is there a second? Second. Okay, all right, second from Commissioner Spry. And so we are ready to discuss. And Jay, please chime in if there's some things you want to speak to. So as I don't know that it matters which one we talk about first. Let's look at sustainability budget 138. So as I heard from David and from my reading, obviously on the page that looks like this with the blue banner across the top, the column on the right, fiscal year 18-19, is the one that we're focusing on. And the important numbers to look at is that the projection is that we will carry forward a cash balance of $136,000 this year. And then the revenue is estimated. And then if you look in the expense section, you see that there's the last item is called program expenses of $289,250. Now turn to the next page, which delineates all the budget items. And you will see that if you follow the far right column down, almost to the end, there is an item, unallocated program expenses of $275,000. So that's the number that City Manager Reddy was saying we have the authority to budget, to chunk up into various project categories as we see fit, in its entirety, the entire $275,000, or a portion of it. And as he said, any portion not spent then would become a part of the cash balance that would roll over into the next fiscal year of 1920. So do I have that right, Jay? Is that the correct understanding? That
Yes, you do, Mr.
That we could
Chair.
say, okay, $5,000 for a film festival and $10,000 for next year's Modernism Week stuff and this, that, and the other.
Yes.
Is
And
that-
did Dr. Reddy make mention of having to do that right now at this meeting or
No,
allocate throughout the year? Very good.
So,
Okay.
and yes, so, and to circle back, he suggested that perhaps we have a budget subcommittee. And certainly what I'm thinking is that we would want, we'd want really all the commissioners to look at their areas of expertise and responsibility within the commission, and then to sort of feed in their suggestions for how that money might be spent. Maybe there's some rebate money. I think if we all put our thinking caps on, to use that old phrase, and contribute our ideas, we could do that. And I think David was sort of saying, maybe we don't allocate every penny, that we assume there ought to be some reserve, because that fund, 138 seems to have less of a life maybe than the recycling fund. So is that sort of the picture that everybody understands? Commissioner Santora?
Yeah, a couple questions. He also mentioned the staffing issues.
Right.
So obviously that takes funding. Is that in a separate line item that we don't have to consider here, or is that something that we would have to?
I think what Dr. Reddy was saying was that if we wanted some dedicated staff, either in addition to or in some other configuration, that there's no other place for that to come out of except the unallocated program expense. So he said, if you wanted to request some additional staffing dollars, it would come out of unallocated program expense, and it would dump back up into the personnel section eventually.
Okay, well, that makes sense, but I guess it gets to the question, if there is, and I don't know that there has been any discussion about additional staffing, but it seems to me then that would have to be considered a temporary staffing, because unless this can roll over on an annual budgetary basis into the personnel expenses, I don't know how. You've been thinking about that, maybe you guys can help.
I think that's partly the issue, the level of staffing and the sustainability of the sustainability fund to continue to fund a position into the future. Now, what we do know is that when there was a full-time manager prior, when Michelle Mycian was here, some of her salary dollars were split between this fund and the recycling fund based on an allocation of how much time she spent, I think. No, was that, is that not true?
It was 50-50.
Oh, it was 50-50? Okay. And so there was.
As mine is as well.
Okay. Oh, all right. So why don't we just sort of leap into that one, because it's really all sort of the same discussion. If you look at the recycling fund, far right column, they project a beginning cash balance that would be declared sometime after July 1, and it usually isn't settled until September or even October once all the bills come through. But they're estimating 835, and the various expenses. But then if you see program expenses of $1,076,000 on this page, flip to the other page, and as Dr. Reddy pointed out, if you look down, a number that I rarely see in my life, if you look down the far right column, there is a nice round $1 million sitting toward the end of that column, and that's the unallocated program expense from the recycling fund. And so theoretically, this commission could spend $1 million next year if you have projects that relate to recycling. That's a lot of trash cans, Rob. That's a lot of trash cans, a lot of branded trash cans. But anyway, so that's $1 million that we could allocate. So again, not just the Waste Reduction Committee, everybody could contribute some ideas if you think you have a project that relates to recycling. So yes.
Before you do begin the discussion, one thing I do want to bring up on the sustainability fund, the interfund transfer to Cogen that has been going on, this $152,100. This is the last year that money will come out of the sustainability fund. They have been taking it out, we found out, and it's been set aside in the energy fund for the city. Yeah. So that money will be available starting with the 1920 budget.
So this is the last year that they're going to take that out?
Correct.
That's new news.
It's the 5th year.
And our understanding was that it hadn't started yet and it was going to go for 5 years.
That was my understanding as well, but in discussions on the budget with the Director of Finance, it was discovered that that money had been taken out, for the past 4 years, and this will be the last year that it's taken out. So that's good news.
Okay. All right.
Can I have a question?
Okay, so just, okay, and that, okay, and that's the only yes, there was no money out of the recycling fund. It all came out of 138.
Correct.
Okay.
And
This
it
is
will
last year.
be coming out for the
All right.
18-19 budget.
Okay. All
But
right.
that's the last year.
Commissioner Spry.
If I remember correctly, we had some extra money because of a turf buyback program that we didn't finish. Is that, I guess my question is, does turf buyback, is that part of recycling? And could we?
Turf
bring that-
buyback would be a part, it would be a water conservation project.
Water
And so,
recycling?
No.
I mean, aren't we all
that
connected,
could- That
really?
could be a little bit of a stretch. So any money, any program money that wasn't spent is a part of the beginning cash balance number. So it got rolled forward. But I think, I don't know, I'll let the wiser heads.
I guess just some super good clarification about what kind of projects would be recycling besides a lot of garbage cans.
Yeah. All right, and we can come back to that. So, Jay, your advice here, about, certainly, we don't, yes, Dr. Reddy did not suggest that we need to do it tonight. He suggested, I think, a 30 to 60-day window of discussion. Was that what the rest of you heard for budget? That perhaps he is thinking that he'd like for us to accomplish budget recommendations maybe by end of July? Is that, or middle of July, somewhere in that timeframe? Does that, Jay, does that sound right to you?
That sounds correct. Now, keeping in mind, there are, once this is approved, the commission does have discretion to reallocate from that line item as it sees fit. So
Right.
I believe there's flexibility. We did this exercise last year where we wanted to drill down and find out what those unallocated program expenses were about. A number of very good program descriptions were developed with funding potential. And so, there's good precedent that's been set here.
Right, right. Okay, so I'm thinking that what might be helpful, and this is sort of, off the top of my head, as we heard from Dr. Reddy, would be helpful if, with staff assistance, of course, looking back at past year, but also we have new commissioners and new ideas. If you have ideas based on your areas of responsibility or discussions that have been in sustainability on an allocation that you think ought to appear for either the Sustainability Fund 138 or the Recycling Fund, I'm thinking it would be helpful if Dan could collect that information for us. And if we could do that, we can come up with a date in some timely fashion so that we could have have at least one discussion at the June meeting of what we've collected. But it does seem as if perhaps it would be helpful to have some small subcommittee of the commission to review that collection of information and work with Jay and Dan in assembling it in some fashion to interpret to the commission. Do those things make sense for us to try to do by June 19th?
Mr. Chair,
Yep. Commissioner
I
Sanders.
thought I heard that Mr. Reddy wanted us to pass this tonight and then worry about the allocations later. Is that
Right.
what we're doing?
Right.
Okay.
So we're in discussion. We're gonna come back and vote on adopting the budget, but I'm sort of just wanting to know about the other procedures. So we can go ahead and take our vote if you want to do that and discuss the.
Okay, I've got a couple questions. I
Okay.
guess They can
All right.
wait, but
Please.
just in terms of these, both these line items for both of these budgets, I think he also mentioned that there was some flexibility in terms of the fiscal year that we can spend into the next one, right? Is that, and are those amounts already pre-designated?
You can carry over, and the amounts are not pre-designated.
Okay, so we could carry over these entire amounts into the next fiscal year without any concern about Department of Finance coming back and saying, yeah, we can use that money on something else.
No, the short answer to that is that's not true. You could choose not to allocate 1 penny of the 275,000 or 1 penny of the million. You could wait and say, oh, I will spend that next year. But whether we allocate it or don't allocate it, my understanding is there's nothing that prohibits the city council from coming up with their own idea to spend the money. They couldn't spend the recycling money except for a recycling project. I think they would be held to the same standard that we're held there. But we really can't spend 1920 money. I mean, it just, as Jay says, it just rolls over. The other comment that Jay made is very true. A budget, a program allocation that we might make in June or July is simply a plan. And as you follow through that year of plan, you could underspend something and overspend something else based on your commission votes. But it does help you. I think it does help you to have a plan, especially for the smaller dollar fund in particular. So why don't we circle back? Are you ready to vote on the budgets? And then we can come back and decide how we want to proceed with sort of how we manage the program allocations. Let's do them separately. All in favor of the budget as presented for, it's listed, Recycling Fund 125 is listed first. All in favor of adopting the fiscal year 2018-19 Recycling Fund budget, 125, say yes.
Yes.
Opposed, say no. Abstain. All right, that's approved. All in favor of adopting the Sustainability Fund 138 budget as presented, say yes.
Yes.
Opposed, say no. Abstain, and that is approved. Okay, so we've got our budgets, and again, I think we've got some good clarity here, so that's great. So, do you want to proceed with beginning a commission discussion in June on allocating program dollars in each of these two funds?
Yes.
Seems to make sense? Okay, so why don't we do this? How about a deadline of, if our meeting is on the 19th, why don't we make a deadline of sending your materials to Dan on the same deadline as we request your reports, which would be, well, and when the agenda is, no, we need it sooner than that. Let's do at least 10 days out, or 12 days out. So the 12th, how about making Monday, June 11th, the deadline for you to send in your budget thoughts? And then that would give a committee at least 8 days to schedule a meeting and have something coherent to say at the June meeting. Commissioner Baker.
Are there any references to look back to see how this money has been allocated in the past?
Dan can give us some history.
Just some ideas?
Yeah.
I'll send an email out with past programs.
And if you don't have the sustainability plan? Okay.
All right, so I think my other question is, are there a couple of folks who would like to be a part of the discussion, which will involve both program allocation and some discussion of staffing models as well? Are there persons who'd like to be a part of that? Okay, I see Commissioner Goins, Commissioner Futterman, Commissioner Clark. Okay.
And for the record, John and I were the subcommittee last summer. So we welcome Jennifer.
Okay, all right, great. Okay, so they will be our budget subcommittee. And hopefully you three are in town between the 11th of June and the 19th of June to figure out a meeting time. Okay? All right? What else?
Just
do
the
we-
ad hoc committee?
Pardon me?
An ad hoc committee?
Yep, so we will have an ad hoc committee whose life will extend till June 30th. Which is as long as my authority lasts to appoint an ad hoc committee. So,
Why did you choose those dates?
well, I'm trying to get the data so that we can have some discussion at the June 19th meeting. And I'm trying to give commissioners as much time as possible between now and then to send their information to Dan, but then trying to give you a window of discussion time. You can certainly meet as a subcommittee before and have a discussion, as much of a discussion as you want, and then see what other data is collected. You can meet any time you want, I think. All right, yes.
2 o'clock at a coffee shop.
Yeah, Commissioner Gothier.
So you asked us to send programmatic ideas to Daniel, what, also staff
I think if you have a
ideas?
staffing idea, send that too, right. So send an idea for sustainability programs, for recycling programs, or if you have a suggestion on a staffing model that you think would be helpful, please send that as well. I guess there's not, there really isn't a Baker Act prohibition that they couldn't send it to the three of you as well. That's not, right? I mean, it could go to Dan.
As I get the recommendations, I'll forward it to the three
Okay,
of them.
all right, that may just be the most efficient thing, so, sure. So Dan will collect it, and he'll forward it all to the three of you as it comes. All right, have we handled this sufficiently, I think? Okay, all right. Okay, we're at item 2, and I'm gonna call on Commissioner Friedman to move that item.
Thank you, Chair Jackson. I'd like to start by moving the motion that's before you on the agenda. And that is the Sustainability Commission supports the City of Palm Springs choosing the Desert Community Energy carbon-free option for the city's electricity consumption.
Second.
All right, and there's a second from Commissioner Santora, and so we are in discussion. You have in your packet, there were 2 items, a memo from Commissioner Friedman and a Q&A document. So Commissioner Friedman, would you like to speak to the highlights?
Yes, the highlights, a lot is in the report and the collateral materials that CVAG sent. First is that our sustainability plan, which council approved in June 2016, sets ambitious greenhouse gas reduction goals. They're set out in the report. But one of the most relevant for this purpose is that the city set the goal of supplying 75% of all city building energy needs from renewable sources by 2020, and that's coming up really soon. The DCE carbon-free option is 35%. That's solar, wind, geothermal, and also includes existing hydropower, but no nuclear. So the key difference is that you get, for both of them, they're solar, wind, and geothermal, but it gets to be carbon-free largely by using hydropower, and what we don't realize is that actually we have hydropower here in the area as a result of DWE, the water coming down either through the Colorado River Aqueduct or through Snow Creek. So actually, I don't know how DCE would work it out, but it goes to Edison for the moment, but we actually do generate hydropower here locally. But the key sort of reason for doing this is that there's no additional cost to the city, so what DCE has proposed is essentially 100% carbon-free, but at the same rate that the city is already paying Southern California Edison. But it clearly sends a message to our residents that the city is following the goals set out in the sustainability plan and would send them a message saying, well, the city is doing this. This is a good sort of example to follow. So it really is putting our money, but no more money, because it's the same price, where Martha is, and setting an example. So the details are in the report, but that certainly are the key reasons why I've asked our commission to recommend this and would work with Director Verada in preparing any materials for the city council meeting of June 6th, and intentionally wrote the memo so it be recycled into the staff report. So I kind of anticipated that. So that's quickly what I would have to say. I'd certainly be welcome to answer any questions that you have.
So our understanding is that this will be before, thanks. Our understanding is that this will be before council on June 6th, and this was one of the topics that Councilmember Coors requested that we address, if we wished, so that there would be some additional commission information that could be sent to council. So that's part of this discussion. Are there further questions or discussion about this item? Commissioner Santoro.
Yeah, Commissioner Friedman, I don't know if you can answer the question, but because it was in the PR materials that I was reading about, the overall proposal mentioned a number of times that the plan to move to the community energy project would not only save but create new jobs for the community. Yet there's a serious lack of specificity about what that means, where those jobs are, who's going to do those jobs, are they new, are they recycled jobs? And so I hesitate to use those materials as far as the commission is concerned. If we don't have that kind of information, I'm wondering if you could help.
I can address what's in the implementation plan. There is a very detailed implementation plan that had to be filed with the CPUC, which was done at the beginning of December, and that is actually addressed in the implementation plan, which I have somewhere in my materials there. But the quick answer is the rollout plan in the implementation plan is essentially to favor local generation of energy so that the DCE can buy locally, if you will. So some of the thoughts there are that there was create additional demand so that there would be solar, large-scale solar plants, which we don't really have. I mean, DW has one for its own needs, and also potentially some geothermal. As you know, we have a very good geothermal source at the Salton Sea, but there really has not been any strong geothermal investment. So this would be to create essentially the demand, which would then force the supply. So there are further details in the implementation plan, but those are among the things that DCE is looking at, literally to create a local supply of renewable energy.
And do you happen to know if there's any impact on current jobs of like SCE employees, as an example?
No, essentially, at least locally, just because SCE does the business model of electricity companies is they do not generate their electricity. They make their money on what we call T&D, transmission and distribution, and that's how CCAs work, which is to say you are buying the energy from Desert Community Energy in this case, but the folks who actually deliver the power to your house, that will remain SCE. So all the line people who, you know, if you have a breakdown or something, they're still going to be here to locally do that. SCE does not buy locally generated energy, well, with the exception of maybe using the peaker plant Sentinel on sort of large demand, but it's all essentially merchant power that they buy from other people who build authorized power plants, which generally are not in the desert. So the jobs which are basically the people who deliver the electricity for you will remain for SCE.
Thank you.
All right. Other questions? All right. All in favor of the motion as listed in item E2, say yes.
Yes.
Opposed, say no. Abstain. Okay. Motion passes, and we'll communicate that to City Council, to Councilmember Coors. I'm sure Dan will do that, and I'm sure Commissioner Friedman will do that as well. So we have passed item 2.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, and thank you for the memorandum as well. Very nicely done. we are at item 3, also a request from Councilmember Cordes that we discuss making a statement to council regarding EV charging stations in the downtown redevelopment area. What we think about a Tesla proposal to provide 6 to 24 Tesla-only chargers in the downtown redevelopment area. Are there persons who would like to speak to that, or questions that we want to raise? And Commissioner Friedman.
I have been following this fairly closely. I attended the council meeting at which was discussed. I am a frequent rider of Tesloop, which is the Tesla service that takes you between Palm Springs and Los Angeles, and they stop nearly all the time in Cabazon, and you get a McDonald's, and not necessarily great, but okay, it's lunch. And the advantage of having a local facility is that Tesla could charge here. There was discussed, in addition to the city garage, having a facility at the Rowan. They currently pick you up at what is now the Zoso, was the Hard Rock until a few weeks ago. So I think there would be a strong interest in having a local facility, both for Tesla, but for Tesloop, but for anybody else who basically is going to park downtown and go to any of the new shops in our wonderful new downtown. So this is something that I think is no risk to the city, from what I understand from the proposal. Tesla installs things, and there does seem to be a strong demand.
Okay. Commissioner Sprague.
Just a question. So these are Tesla only, and it's great they're offering for free. I mean, who doesn't want that? I'm just wondering, if there's a limited amount of spaces where you can put these things, and then and those are taken up all by Tesla, and then does that cause any kind of problem for, when
The generic
Yeah.
EV charging station
yeah.
people.
I don't know if there's an unlimited amount of spaces where we can put these.
Yeah.
If they're
No, I think that's a reasonable question, and that was what I was wondering, if that was a nuance that was a part of this. Jake, can you
Well,
answer
right
that?
now, there's plenty of space. As new projects come online and as the project area becomes more popular, say for events and such, that may change. But at this time, my understanding is Tesla is wanting to start with a smallish number of cars and increase it perhaps to, stations, and increase that to 24 at some point in time, which would be in the 1,000 space parking garage. So at this point, it doesn't seem like it would take up too many spaces, as we don't have a supply issue just yet.
Okay. All right.
I would just reinforce
Commissioner
that, Jessica.
McCann?
The existing city's charging stations, like in the parking lot downtown, there's only 2 slots, I think, that have them. And, yeah, 4, but one of them, like, there's one in one area on one floor, and then there's another 2, and it just seems like, yeah, we could handle a couple more slots without any problem.
All right. Yes, Dan?
Again, this is another thing for the programs for sustainability. We could look into getting more EV chargers from another company to put in that downtown redevelopment parking garage, if you wish.
All right, Commissioner Goins.
Just as an aside, I think we had a discussion about this several months ago, and the price was not very cost prohibitive, about $1,500 per EV station installed or something like that is what I recall, so not very expensive to do.
All right, so we know, and Senior Manager Reddy reinforced that, we speak with our vote, so do we want to, are you willing to vote? We didn't advise you of a motion in advance, but the discussion was on the agenda, to have a motion such as the Sustainability Commission supports the installation of 6 to 24 Tesla-only chargers in the downtown redevelopment area. Is that something you want to vote on so that it's an official action of the commission?
Yes. Question, if I could.
Commissioner Santora?
Wasn't there some discussion about those stations charging?
Well,
Pardon the pun, but.
right,
charging?
exactly. Charging for charging.
Yes.
So, let's back up and ask the question you didn't ask. Are these Tesla stations, are they going to be provided free charging to Tesla customers, or are they going to be charging for charging?
I don't
We don't know.
know the complete model of Teslas. However, my understanding is that with the purchase of your car, you also get charging at Tesla stations.
Oh,
So free in that sense. And Commissioner Friedman, please
Yeah,
chime in.
my understanding, I'm just quickly going to the city council discussion, but my understanding is that this is in fact already essentially prepaid, and the Tesla offers this. So not only is it offering free to the city, the units, but it also offers free to its customers, the charging.
right, okay.
In other words, they would pay for the electricity.
Well, the electricity, but also the rather large the units and also the installation of the units. So essentially, it is a gift. These chargers are literally a gift to the city. They show up with the chargers and also provide, presumably the labor, but certainly all the electronic hardware. So my understanding is that Tesla assumes all of the cost of the installation, as well as does not charge its customers for the units.
All right, and just to follow up on the rest of the question before we go to another one from Commissioner Santora, item 4 is about charging for city-owned EV charging stations. So we're going to talk about that in a generic fashion after we've addressed the Tesla issue. Okay?
Tesla question.
Yes.
But I think Roy had a point about, I mean, the city is going to assume the payment for the ongoing electricity charges.
No, the answer is
We're
no.
going to send a bill every month to Tesla with our electricity bill for those 4
I don't know
stations?
how technically this works, but I believe, I'm trying to just get to that point
Mm-hmm.
on the agenda. As far as I know, the city would not assume how that works is that, I'm not sure how sort of they connect with, I think the meter goes to them. In other words, what I expect, my guess is that it's separately metered and they get the electricity bill.
I mean,
That's certainly my understanding. I'm just trying to get to the,
All right, while you're looking, did staff have a comment on that?
No, we actually don't.
You don't have a
know
clear-
that specific level.
I don't think it was discussed at city council who pays for the charging. They were just, of the Tesla vehicles.
Aha.
I did watch the city council presentation, and like you said, they wanted to start with 12, but then the city council decided to start with just 6. Tesla wanted to start with 12. And city council decided to start with 6. But the actual who pays for the charging of an individual vehicle was not discussed at city council.
Okay.
And based on stopping at Cabazon all the time, you just literally pull in and charge up. And I've never seen the guy like put in a credit card or anything like that. I think
Okay.
it's a service that
But I
Tesla
guess you don't
offers.
know who's behind that bill. Yeah. Okay?
I'm checking quickly on the.
Yep, okay. Commissioner
The
Baker,
way,
and then
the
we'll
way
come back
it
to
works,
Commissioner
though, is partially correct. As a owner, you just drive up, but the amount of time you can spend is metered by Tesla. So you can't just plug your
Right.
car in overnight and walk
Right.
away.
Yep, no, we all get that.
But
The
it doesn't
question
answer
is
the question who
paying
pays the utility
Right.
for the delivery of the
Okay,
electricity.
hold on. Let Commissioner Santora and then Commissioner Sprite.
Just found the agenda items.
Okay.
Let me just go up there. Oh, no, it was a discussion. It wasn't.
Okay, Commissioner Santora.
Okay, so, I mean, there's a couple words floating around we need to clarify. So the word free has different meanings to different people, right? So the space is, or spaces, are owned by the city.
So they would be,
So we're not
Given over to-
leasing these spaces, we're allowing them to use that. We don't have an answer on who's paying for the power yet. We know it's not the customer. We do know that Tesla is going to put in the
Charging station
the
unit
equipment,
for-
but we don't know if that's going to be separately metered. Is that correct? So then I could just very easily offer my opinion to the discussion is that I don't believe the city should incur any cost whatsoever for a Tesla-only power station.
Commissioner Sprite.
Agree. I was going to say the same thing.
All right.
I think we have to know what it is going to cost and who's paying for it before we make a decision on it. At least I do.
All right. So I'm wondering if somebody has a motion in mind that they'd like to make.
Motion to table the motion until
Well, I mean, you could you could, if you wanted to, or not, you could support the installation of Tesla-only chargers in the downtown redevelopment area with the caveat, with the condition that the city does not pay for the electrical, the cost of electricity supplied to the charging station. If you wanted
would
to make such a
also
motion, you could.
like to add, Mr. Chair, to address part of Commissioner Santora's question. The city is prohibited from charging at that parking garage because of the project financing agreement it entered into with the developer. So parking there is supposed to be free regardless. So that's part of it in terms of cost, lost revenue to the city. So I think the outstanding question is who will pay for the electricity?
Yeah, so we could let them, we could theoretically say they can park free in the space, but who's paying for the electric bill is another question. All right, I've lost track of, Commissioner Goins, did you have your hand up?
I guess I was just thinking that at some point, if those spaces become valuable, then we're privileging a Tesla EV over other EVs or privileging other EVs over other uses. We may want to do that. I just want to we should be clear about what our intent is.
And it sounds like council's monitoring that by only approving 6 at this point. Yes, Dan?
I just from watching the video, I do remember one thing. Councilman Kors owns a Tesla, and he says that when you're charging your Tesla, Tesla will send you an email when you've reached your either 2 or 5 hour limit, so that you will go and disconnect. Otherwise, you lose your ability to charge for a certain amount of days or whatever. So you get penalized.
And that's nice, and that's nice, but it doesn't tell us who pays the bill. All right, if there's a motion, we'll hear it. Otherwise, I'm moving on to item 4.
Well, I'd like to
Commissioner
make
Freeman?
the motion that I think you just sort of made, which is that the commission supports the installation subject to what Daniel just mentioned. The city would start in stages 6 to 24 based on demand, but clearly subject to the condition that all costs are borne by Tesla. My recollection is that there was not a staff report, but a PowerPoint that was presented, and which I don't have, but there wasn't any discussion of the city paying for it. I'm going to assume that Tesla would cover the electricity, but that would be the condition of the motion.
Okay, all right. Okay.
I second.
So we have a motion from Commissioner Friedman, and we have a second from Commissioner Spry. We've already had some discussion, but I'll invite more.
My only question is the term of the lease, or not lease, the term of the gift? Like, when can Tesla revoke the gift? When can they take it back?
Or when can we take our space back?
I don't know that we know that. Commissioner
Maybe
Wilson?
just add subject to periodic review.
I don't recall the term, and I think the city council was managing it. The proposal was to manage it by doing it in stages, but I can't picture, based on what I know of the city's other policies, of it being anything perhaps like 5 to maximum of 10 years, but I think it may be that, but I don't know. I don't recall that level of detail. It's presumably in the agreement that Tesla sent, but I don't have that. I would be happy to amend the motion to say is that subject to the city being able to take it back, take back the spaces if there's, demand for that. So
yeah,
if that's a concern, I'd be happy to make that.
I think Commissioner Wilson's just subject to periodic review sort of covers that.
I would accept that as a friendly motion, friendly amendment.
Friendly amendment. Okay. Vice Chair Clark.
I guess I'd like to go back to what Commissioner Baker said. I think we should table it for now because we're making a motion subject to a bunch of conditions. I think it would be better if we discussed it once we had the answers to those things.
I don't know if there's a timeliness factor on this one. I don't know when this is going to council. All right. And now here's where, who among you is the parliamentarian? Because we already have a motion and a second and discussion. And now we've had a. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Parliamentarian. I will declare you out of order.
No, that was discussion. That was discussion.
Oh, that was discussion?
And we can vote no.
Oh, okay, exactly. If you're inclined to table, I'd suggest you vote no.
That was my intent.
Oh, okay, thank you. All right. I see no other hands raised. All in favor of the motion that Commissioner Friedman made and seconded by Commissioner Spry with a friendly amendment by Commissioner Wilson. If you're in favor of that, say yes.
Yes.
Opposed, say no.
No.
Abstain? One no, one abstention, and the balance was yes, so motion passes. Okay, all right. That's why Dan and Jay are paid the big bucks. All right, so now we're at item 4, discussion on requiring payments at city-owned EV charging stations. I think we have a sense of the room on that. Do one of you two want to address this? I think presently we have a lot of charging stations that were initially funded by grants, and both the installation of the charging station and the payment of the electricity. So for a number of years, they were free and clear. That money has long since expired, and the city, while we still have the functioning charging station, the city's been paying the electricity. So the question is, do we support requiring payment at city-owned EV charging stations? And I think there has also been some discussion in past meetings that it be an escalating charge, that there be a certain period of time where it's a certain rate for the first hour or two, and then the third hour is a higher rate, and the fourth hour is a higher rate, and beyond 4, we gouge you. And that's to get you, and that's simply to get you to move. I mean, I'll state it that way. It's to get you to move so that the next user can come in, park, charge their vehicle, and go shopping, which is what you kind of want people to do. I think that's the model. Is that? I'll never be a politician because I use the word gouge. That's not a, yeah. Okay, Commissioner Baker.
I believe from our library discussion that the idea was to keep it at least 3 hours so people have time to eat and to shop. Yeah, that's all.
Yeah. So what, staff, what would you like for us to do? Do you want us to have a motion to vote on this tonight? What would be helpful to you?
Yeah, I think maybe just get a sense of the rate at this point.
Oh, a sense of the rate to charge?
Yeah, how you want to charge. I mean, we don't, we want to start charging. I think we should, my opinion. We currently have 34 charging stations in the city, the bulk of which are at the airport. But half of them already have keypads on them, half of them don't. So there would be the cost of adding the keypads to about 20 of them or 18 of them.
To enable a charging mechanism.
To enable a charging mechanism. My understanding is that you join a kind of like a club where you get billed on a monthly basis by by how much you use. You enter a code into the keypad, and that's basically your account number, and that allows you to charge. And then at the end of the month, I guess the company, the club sends you a bill. So there's really no charge card or anything that goes through the keypad itself. But and I guess everybody who has an electric vehicle belongs to one of these clubs in order to charge.
Okay. Well, I think we don't have to dictate how it happens in this room, but you want some sort of sense about whether or not we think payment ought to be required, and then you would like a sense of what we think the rate ought to be? Why don't we take?
Or rates.
Or rates. All right. Commissioner Santora.
My sense of it at this point is that there needs to be some research in terms of the cost to the city currently, and that it should be expense neutral to the city, whatever that figure comes out to. Now, having said that, if the cost of the power and the maintenance, the installation, the upgrade of all that stuff, and the personnel that has to monitor it are cost prohibitive, then we have to balance that against what the city's goals are in terms of, carbon neutral policies. But not knowing any of those numbers, my feeling is that it should be expense neutral to the city and not necessarily a, revenue generating, but at least expense neutral.
Commissioner Goins.
To offer a differing thought as we move into our budgetary expenses, this might be an opportunity for us to consider a line item to at least research if there are additional grants, or maybe have city staff see if there are additional grants that could continue to subsidize payment, or at least some portion of the payment, just to incentivize electric vehicle use in the city. So that might be another direction.
Okay. All right. Why don't we do this? Why don't we have a, do you want a motion or just a sense of the commission on this? You want a motion? Okay. I'm thinking we could not address the rate at this moment, but just address the concept of charging. And if someone wanted to make a motion that Sustainability Commission supports a charging system at city-owned EV stations.
I would move that the Sustainability Commission develops an EV charging stations throughout the city to be determined later on the actual costs and time limits.
Okay. Is there a second?
Second.
Second from Commissioner Friedman. Further discussion? All in favor say yes? Yes. All opposed say no? Abstain? All right, motion passes. Is there anyone who feels competent to see? I don't own a electric vehicle, so I don't really know what the rates are. Is there somebody who would like to advise staff on at least a rate scenario? I mean, it's obvious there's a cost to install the charging mechanisms and all the other things that Commissioner Santoro addressed. Is there someone who would like to?
Yeah, I'm happy in my spare time to look into this. But if somebody else wants to do it, that's perfectly fine. I guess because it's somewhat related to green build, it's sort of part of the, renewable sort of space.
Okay.
But if somebody else wants to do it, I'm perfectly
Commissioner
fine.
Friedman's spare time is in limit.
Well, maybe
I would take it off of his shoulders.
Yeah, maybe staff could do a little research on
That's
what
perfect.
typical charging rates are, and I do think while I appreciate Commissioner Goins' possibilities of getting some grants that would help incentivize EV use, I also think after 4 hours we want to move people along. We don't want people using it as a parking space all day long while they do something else. So I think we need to figure out a rate structure that accelerates in some way as another kind of incentive to get them to move their vehicle at lunch and let somebody else park there. So do we need to come back to that or agendize that for a future meeting when staff could make a report? July maybe? June, July? What? July? Okay. All right. All right, let's try to move on. Item 5, this also came up in our study session meeting. The possibility of appointment of a commissioner liaison who would work with Councilmember Coors and Director Verada regarding bike rental company businesses. Seems as if we have a plethora of businesses that are interested. If there's someone who would like to be available to consult with them as those businesses wish to establish a presence, which gets at the issue, I think, of which we talked about where bikes are parked in some kind of corral, or whether or not they can be left on sidewalks, or whether there's a more official docking station that we would require. There was some discussion at prior meetings about whether or not we want a bicycle leaning up against palm trees randomly on Palm Canyon Drive on Thursday night, or any other night for that matter. So there are those issues. Is there anyone who would like to volunteer? And if not, we'll put it on my replacement. Yes.
We, just for, in case anybody is interested, we are having another company come in July to give a presentation.
No, I think it's June. It's
Or
at the
June, I'm
meeting.
sorry, in June, to do another presentation. And they're coming from out of town, so, and they'll be here, all day if anybody wants to meet with them
Okay.
beforehand.
Right. I don't hear a volunteer. If there's something that comes up in the next 45 days.
Right. I
I'll
would
volunteer.
say, what's important about this, and we're discussing what sounds like right-of-way issues that may be more appropriate for engineering staff to chime in and let us know what the existing regulations are, et cetera. I think from this commission, the benefits of having non-motorized vehicles and how to make that work may be something that we would want to make sure is considered. However, it's really early in the process.
Right, right.
So,
Sure. Well, if I can be helpful in the next 45 days, call me. All right, item 6 is, I think, just to get this before you. It's, again, Councilmember Coors asked the question, what's the next steps on future bike routes? And we don't have, while we have two commissioners, Wilson and Gothier, looking at pedestrian issues, we don't presently have among sitting commissioners someone who is focused on bicycle routes. So that was a request that we look at the next steps there, and I raise it. I'm willing to appoint someone if there's someone who's interested, and if there's not, it can fall to the next commission to organize after July 1. Yes, Commissioner Goins.
I just had a comment, and I'm not a planner, I'm not a trained planner, but I would imagine that bike routes would fall into the purview of a complete streets plan. And while thinking about all these things in silos might help us get to a lot of detail, at the end of the day, I think what we want is a plan that helps us address all of these issues. And I know it's more work, but I think just dealing with bike routes by itself may not help us get to where we want to go. So that's my thought.
Sure. And, yeah, big picture is always helpful, and the cyclist would also say, there's a gap from here to there, who's going to help me, so there's kind of there's certainly the big picture, and there's also what can we do in the next 24 months to help out the current plan. So, yeah. All right, I just wanted to address that. Councilmember Coors did, so we'll leave that hanging. Vice Chair Clark.
Just a minor comment from my notes from the study session. There were 2 points, and one was that we've just added some new bike routes, so those should go onto the map. But then I think Jeff had suggested that we look, like Chair Jackson said, look at what the next phase should be as far as bike routes.
All right, item 7, I just wanted to list this because it was an item that we discussed. I think maybe we've addressed it pretty well. We all know that whenever we vote, that's on an issue that goes to council, but I think our question was, yes, we vote, but how does that record of our minutes get where it's going? Certainly the chair could communicate directly with council, but I think what we've got is now staff are assuring that is happening. Is that, Dan, you want to speak to this? Dan developed a list of action items.
Speaking with some of the other commissions, especially Planning Commission, they do an action item like what you see, and it's basically taken off of the minutes, but leaving on only things that the city council needs to be aware of that we voted on.
Okay.
So it's just stating just a quick, not real detailed report of what we spoke about, what we voted on, and what the city council
So
needs to be
all
aware of.
votes and some other significant sorts of things?
Correct.
Okay, so that's, goes to all council members and city manager Reddy, or just to Councilmember Coors as our liaison?
This one just went to Councilman Coors, but
Okay.
we can, if this is what they want, I haven't heard back from, have you heard back from him, Jay?
I think this is pretty much what they're asking for the full council.
Okay,
okay,
so it
for
will
full
go to
council.
the full council
Okay, all right,
and the city manager.
okay. Other questions, commissioners? All right. I don't know if there's any, I just wanted to, if we think we've lost anything, item 8 was any additional follow-up to April 23rd. I think we're doing it, but if anybody has something they think we've missed on the agenda. Commissioner Santoro?
Yeah, just want to follow up on the economic sustainability discussion we had. I know it was a bit of a surprise for him, but I want to keep that on our agenda till we have something tangible. Have you been able, Jay, to follow up on any of the meetings that we discussed to gather more information?
Not quite yet, Commissioner, but we'll get that done.
I'll remind you.
Okay.
All right, we're at committee and commissioner reports. Item 1, Standing Committee on Solar and Green Building, Commissioners Friedman and Goins.
Okay, I'll start out with a couple of mostly solar points and green building, and then Commissioner Goins can follow up. First is that I mentioned last month, but I was working with staff on the store card to have Palm Springs designated as a Soul Smart City. We've made very good progress. There is a solar statement that Dr. Reddy just signed. There is a rather large scorecard and some materials on training that the Department of Building and Safety did, as well as a zoning review. The good news is that all of that has been essentially processed by staff, and Daniel, I think you said the letter has been mailed. I'll send the remaining materials, and from what I understand from the National League of Cities person who handles the Soul Smart designation, we should have enough points to go straight to gold. So I'll follow up on that and hopefully have good news for our next commission meeting, and they show up, I guess, at City Council with a plaque. But the good news is in particular that we've really done an awful lot more things to do, but we've done an awful lot, and hopefully we'll go straight to gold. So that's very good news. Daniel, if you could circulate to the other commissioners the solar statement that Dr. Reddy just signed, because I didn't get a chance to ask you that before our meeting today. And then second is that 3 years into the process, last Wednesday, the State Energy Commission approved the 2019 Energy Code, which will require new residential construction to install solar beginning January 1, 2020. I had asked Daniel to circulate a fairly good article about that in today's Desert Sun, and it correctly indicates that the solar savings here in the Coachella Valley will be the best really in the state because of the rather high electricity use during the summer. So if you combine that between that and DCE, there should be some fairly good savings there. So that's good news. The next step, if you recall, when we did this process, in December of, I guess, probably 2016, we recommended that there be until the energy code goes into effect in 2020. There is a policy adopted by City Council concerning new construction to strongly urge the developers to do that. What has not yet been done, but as part of the next step, is to look into retrofit. So the point in the action items from the study session is that I would like to sort of prepare some materials for council to consider about, if not requiring, at least strongly encouraging the folks, if you come up for a retrofit permit for a rather large retrofit, would be 25% of your existing size, or I believe above 500 square feet, that you'd be required to get solar. But once again, this is something that we already have voted on because that was part of our recommendation and planning commission. But sort of now that we've got DCE and its rates, and the Energy Commission is there, all of the sort of prerequisites of bringing this to council for at least initial discussion are available. So that's it until the next report from me, but I'll defer to Commissioner Goins for anything else.
From you, Commissioner Goins? Okay. Questions, commissioners? Thank you. Waste Reduction Subcommittee.
Okay, we've, as you know, we've got a bunch of initiatives going, and in the interest of being brief, as it's 10 to 7, I will briefly summarize them. We have a program that we're trying to put together to improve access to battery recycling facilities here in the city, and we have a grant proposal that was submitted to Cal Recycle, I think, that's in works right now. We got some news this week that some of the line items in terms of our budget were inadmissible for the program, and so we've just eliminated them. And since we have $1 million in recycling money, we can certainly make it up from there. We have a ongoing initiative to come up with recommendations for a styrofoam and possibly a straw ban in the city. Jessica, why don't you give us a quick update on what we've done in the last month?
Well, I think we reported last time that we met with the Hospitality Association, and we're still working with them to see if they want to join us in exploring this issue, since they seem to have a lot of problems with it. We have met, and we're creating a survey. I've created a survey that we're going to send out to the local restaurants, food vendors, to get their input. And we're just trying to really spread the word right now about our intentions to do this. That's it.
Great, thank you.
Okay.
Third issue, of course, with next year's tightening of the screws with different California level laws and ordinances, we're all concerned about food waste and organic processing. And given that there's going to be additional input, what's going to happen to it, where is it going to go, how are we going to handle it? So this week we went out to take a look at a composting facility, SA Recycling. That was just yesterday that we did that. Thank you, Dan, for organizing that one. The issue that I was particularly interested in there was this the dry carbon-based waste that you put in your green containers and that gets hauled off by PSDS is not going to this company, SA Recycling. It's going to a Burtech company down in Indio. So what was the role of this SA Recycling? What are they doing? And we found that out yesterday. What they're doing is taking self-hauled, basically garden and landscaping waste, and they are composting it right there. They just put the material into long furrows, and the microbes do their work, and then it turns into compost that they can distribute to the various customers. So that's self-hauled, and that's from golf courses and stuff like that. It looks as though, therefore, this company is not really a competitor to PSDS and this Coachella Valley composting company. They're the ones that handle the household stuff, and this company is handling the self-hauled from larger venues. So they seem to be fairly complementary. We nevertheless are still worried about next year the wet organic waste. What about the wet stuff as compared to all this dry stuff? So we're looking at a company, and 1 second, and we're hoping to have a meeting with a representative from the company next week with feedback from Chris Cunningham at PSDS and others. The idea there is that what we should do is do a cogeneration facility, or look into the feasibility of a cogeneration facility down at the wastewater treatment plant, because there's some benefit apparently to co-locating processing of wet organic material, food waste essentially, with the water treatment plant. The water treatment, is already dealing with quite a bit of organic waste in it, food waste. As soon as if you use your garbage disposal unit, that's where it's going. It's going into the sewer system. So everybody thinks that there may be some benefit here. A big issue is source separation and contamination. So this company that we're going to hopefully be meeting with the representative next week, he sent me some material on, they call it organics extrusion press. It's a machine, and it basically takes a non-separated stream of household waste and municipal waste. And it basically, it's a big hydraulic press, and it actually presses out the wet stuff from the dry stuff. So you don't have to self-separate anymore. So that's an option for exploring with them and seeing maybe if we want to go with something like that down with the water waste treatment plant. That was pretty fast. Any questions on that? Anybody? No. Okay, the other thing is, of course, we've been working on trying to get recycled containers into the parks. And you've all heard about this before. So Dan, if you could put that presentation up, I'll just show a couple of slides that'll give you some indication of what's happened on that in the last month. So go to slide 2. There we go. This was new information to us coming from the Parks and Rec Commission, that in fact back in 2015, 3 years ago, there were recycle bins that sustainability had worked on with Parks and Rec, and that were actually sent to the public parks and put out in those 6 locations, in those 5 parks. So here we had been going under the assumption that we needed them because we had done some surveys of the parks and we hadn't seen any of these. We thought that there were no recycle bins in the parks, so there was this discrepancy. So we went out and we resurveyed what was going on, and this is what we found. The green ones, yes, there are some recycle bins there. The red ones, no. They may have been deployed 3 years ago, but they are gone now. So that was interesting. And Dan, let's head off then to, sorry, I had it up here. Try going over to, I think it's like slide 7. Yeah, just go through them. You know, we've got one that we've identified, that one there, we want it, and then keep going. I want to show, keep going, and keep, let's see, go back one, and yeah, keep going back. Okay, sorry. Now forward 2. All right. During our resurvey this month, what we discovered is, so there's Sunrise Park, and there was a trash receptacle in February 2018 when I went back and resurveyed, and lo and behold, it had been replaced by a brand new, wonderful, trash container. And then Roy took a look up in Victoria Park, and there was another one. Then take a look down at Ruth Hardy. This is really the clincher. There's the recycle container from 2015 in Ruth Hardy. But right in front of it now is a brand spanking new, very bright blue trash container. So this is all going against what we're trying to accomplish here, which is to get containers that their form and function is very, very well defined by what they present, and so that the public won't have to go through conniptions to distinguish between trash containers and recycled containers. Good news, Stacy says that she's going to take those away as soon as we get our new recycled containers. So, good news. Then the final thing was that the Parks and Rec Committee today, after seeing all this, they unanimously passed a resolution to accept and move forward with purchasing our candidate container and getting it into the parks. So that's good news.
We're paying for that out of the funding that is available with a little bit of additional funding from us, right?
Correct. About I think we're going to have to supplement by 1,500 or 2,000.
Yeah. But so what you're saying is Parks and Rec agreed to the concept of allowing these receptacles in the parks with the funding that we can provide to get the receptacle.
Correct.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Yes.
Just one thing to add, they also agreed to work with Stacy at where to place the containers in the parks.
Right. That's actually the last slide. If you put it up, Dan. We only have 35 containers. There are a lot more trash containers around. Yeah, well, okay, hold on. Yeah, that's the one. Sorry, I didn't get it up here. But we needed feedback and input on, well, where should we put, we only have 35 of them if that's how many we purchase. Where should they go? Which trash containers are the best bang for the buck to pair them up with? And they're going to help us with that. Okay, I want to make one more point and I'll stop. So Dan, go to the next slide. Oh, that shouldn't have been the end. There. This is a larger issue than just the parks. We have downtown areas and other common areas where there's a plethora of different containers. And we would sure, if we can get some standard containers into the parks, we would like to also start to get them into downtown streets and everywhere that we can. Lainey has sent me a couple of photos of the third area where I think that we would want to try to go for this, and that's inside commercial establishments. Like, look at these in Blaze Pizza and Starbucks and the airport. Again, there's no standardization. And it sure would be nice if we could get a standard trash container and a recycled container in all three of these areas. So that is something that I would like to work on for the future.
The commercial business will be a tough nut to crack. At least maybe we could work on all city spaces.
I mean, with the money that we have from the recycling, there's no reason that we can't work on all city spaces
Yeah,
and
all
try to
city
get
spaces.
something.
Yeah. All right. Questions of the Waste Reduction Subcommittee on any of these topics? Battery recycling, styro straw ban, purchase of the containers, the organics issue. Any questions?
Everyone wants to go home.
Well, you gave a complete report. All right, thank you. All right, we are at item 3, the walkability pedestrian planning. Anything from you, gentlemen? Okay. Anything else, Commissioner Baker, on wellness tonight?
Yes, I reached out to the County of Riverside to try and get a comprehensive list of wellness activities going on for the summer. I'm playing phone tag with the public relations officer, so as soon as he gets back to me, I'll have that for you.
Commissioner Friedman, water.
Okay. Last report for this evening. First, as I mentioned last month, I was going to join DWA and did, and other community representatives on an educational tour of the Hoover Dam and the Colorado River Aqueduct. What I saw was that rather substantial energy and infrastructure is needed to bring water from the Colorado River to the Coachella Valley, which is 100 and something miles. And that reinforces the need for conservation. There's a lot of effort that all that water sort of travels to get over here, including being pumped up from the river and then through the mountains. The next is that DWA at the meeting this morning announced water conservation of 20% from April, which is quite in April from the 2013 baseline, and 13.8% reduction in the last 12 months, which is in line with its target conservation objective of 10 to 13%. The DWA Board Conservation Committee made on April 30th, and I will meet soon with Ashley Metzger to discuss what additional measures the city could take to encourage conservation, and some of them may result in some proposals for us to be discussed next month concerning the program activities. One thing that was discussed a couple of times this morning, and it's on the list that I presented at the study sessions, the DWA would like to see the city to investigate the possibility of extending the recycled water line to Sunrise Park, as they will have additional supplies of recycled water, particularly if the Mesquite Golf Club area is developed for housing. So it sounds that they do have the capacity. So Jay, I'd like to start moving that forward, because I believe DWA has the capacity and that require some investigation of what grant money, particularly Prop 1 money, would be available. So I'll work out with you on that. And then finally, I asked Daniel to include in your materials for this morning a rather comprehensive report on supply and demand through 2045. The net result is that it will balance, but only if additional infrastructure such as the Delta tunnels are constructed for the supply to meet the demand. So if anyone has any questions, happy to answer, but very useful presentation.
Yeah. And yes, we did receive that. Questions of Commissioner Friedman? All right, that ends our reports. And just a reminder that certainly anything that you want to send or can send in advance of the meeting helps all of us absorb all of that information in advance. So, for instance, nice PowerPoint that you got to us. Thank you very much. All right, we are at Commissioner comments.
No.
Oh, I'm sorry, Commissioner Futterman. Outreach, because you have a big event coming up.
We do have a big event coming up, and if you drive on I-10 going west, you'll see a billboard between Bob Hope and Gene Autry, and then if you come into town on Gene Autry, it's the last one coming into town into Palm Springs, towards Vistachino. So Anna Cadena created the creative for this, and she created like a nice 8.5 by 11 that's cut into 3. So if you want to take any of those, if you have anywhere to share them, or if you want an electronic version to share out, and if any of you still have any ideas of good vendors or exhibitors, we still have space. I'm happy that the Milkweed for Monarchs is going to be with us, and forgive me, Grant, I've forgotten your business's name. LSA is going to be with us. And so, and Roy has some fun news about as well about the event.
Today I got an email from Sarah Jane Simon, who's the producer of Eye on the Desert on CBS Local 2, and she has set aside a slot on Monday the 28th of May to have a segment on World Environment Day. So I will reply to her email and introduce you to her, Jen, so that you can work out the details. So that will be between 6:30 and 7 on Channel 2 on the 28th.
So that goes on live?
It's live.
And we will have our farmer's market booth the day before the event, and that will be indoors. It's the first day that the farmer's market goes inside. So that will be a good time as well, hopefully, to catch people and encourage them to come. So thank you for your support in any way of getting the word out, and please come and join us for the day.
Thank you, Jen. And yes, you'd like all the commissioners to drop by who are available that afternoon?
Yes, I think, Dan, did you say that you'll be with us with the table? And
Yeah, I'll have a table there. I'll be there. If anybody else wants to join me, that's fine.
might be a nice way to interface with people that don't go to the farmer's market that may end up coming to the event.
Thank you. Questions? All right.
I
Dan,
just have a statement.
please.
I also put this on the sustainability webpage and on the Healthy Planet, Healthy You Facebook page.
Great.
There is a CVC WED, so it's Coachella Valley Celebrates World Environment Day on Facebook. I guess I'm not really friends with you guys on Facebook, most of you, but if you want to go and like the page and, follow what's going on, that might bring more attention to it as well. So that would be great if you're on Facebook.
All right, we are now at commissioner comments. Any comments from commissioners? Oh, Vice Chair Clark.
I just have a question for Dan. We've talked in the past about the brochure about leaf blowers. I think you've passed that on to city staff, and I wanted to know if you had any feedback.
Defer to Jay.
It's been reviewed, then I believe we revised it again, and then it's been reviewed again, and so we're still waiting for feedback. So it's in that process, Roy.
Will Joe and I have an opportunity to review it?
Well, I believe it was the latest draft you produced, but definitely.
Well,
There were just minor changes to the hours of use. I will send it to you.
Oh, okay. Gosh, we missed our chance when David Reddy was here. We could have asked him that question. That's right. Doggone it. Strike while the iron's hot. Commissioner Friedman.
Very quickly, I know it's late. I think all of you received an email today from the city clerk's office on the advisory body workshop. I think you were there, Roy. Maybe some of you others were there. The one sort of key take, there are a lot of takeaways, but one thing I did want to report back, I had raised the concern about the whenever we email, those emails are public records subject to the Public Records Act, and I had raised that with Councilmember Coors, and the net result is that we, perhaps as soon as July, will be receiving city email addresses, so that we would then be communicating with each other with some form of board or commission, Palm Springs, CA, .gov email address, because otherwise there is concern of using any of these things or our home computers on that. So that's a concern that I've raised, and apparently there will be action in the next couple of months.
Enjoy your new .gov email address. Other commissioners? All right, thank you. Our next meeting of the Sustainability Commission will be on Tuesday, June 19th, 5 o'clock here in this space. Is there a motion that we adjourn? So moved by Commissioner Santora, seconded by Commissioner Friedman's shaking head. And all in favor, say yes, and we're adjourned. Thank you.